Hello, my name is Mark Gibson, and you're listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, a weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Hello and good morning, and you're very welcome to today our final webinar for the season and for 2025. And today we're going to be joined by a number of experts in the whole area of international development. Today's session will be exploring the international development of agri-food systems and the vital role Teagasc plays in supporting sustainable agricultural transformation in partner countries. And through initiatives such as the Development Pamoja project, Teagasc shares scientific expertise, innovation and practical solutions that strengthen food security, resilience and livelihoods. And we're delighted to be joined by Paul Maher, who's Head of International Relations and Corporate Strategy with Teagasc, and also James Hennessy, who's a Walsh Scholar and founder of Development Pamoja. Good morning, Paul and James. You're very welcome.
Good morning.
So before we, you have I know you have an excellent presentation you're going to share with us in a few minutes. Paul, maybe you could give us a little bit of background to the work that you're doing in Teagasc, and I know you're going to deal with the what happens within the project or these projects in your presentation, but just your own background for a moment.
Thanks, Mark, and good morning to everybody. So I'm an agricultural science graduate by training. And spent most of my career working in Teagasc. Spent a little bit of time in the private sector and worked abroad in New Zealand for a year. Most of my time in the advisory and education part of Teagasc as well. So in the last 5 years or so, I've moved into this area of international relations and development projects. So I have a bit of a mixed role, do some corporate strategy stuff as well. So just for today, I'll be focusing on the work we do abroad, as in beyond our normal networks, and I'll explain all that in the presentation. Thanks.
Great. And James, you're a few miles away from Cork today. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and where you're coming to us from today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Well, I'm in Kenya today in Nakuru. So I first came to Kenya in 2007. I was working with another organization, met some very good people there, and we were working on an EU project together. So myself and 3 Kenyans, when that project finished, we started Development Pamoja, and it's rural based. It's all community based initiatives, and we do a lot of focus on agricultural things because the vast majority of people would make their money off the land, small farms between about 2 or 5 acres.
Very good. And what inspired you to head over there in the first instance?
I honestly don't know, Mark. To be honest, I did English and history in college, and then I did economics. So I didn't see too much of a gap for work over in Ireland. So I have a cousin actually. He's quite famous in Kenya, brother call him O'Connell. He trains all the athletes. So obviously when I was younger, I was fascinated by him. So I always wanted to come to this part of the world. And when I came here, I really liked it and pretty much never went back. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, looking forward to your presentation. Cathal, good morning to you. You're going to assist with questions later on. Looking forward to an interesting discussion after the presentation.
There's a bit of a double act here between myself and James, so I'll do some introductory slides kind of across the whole breadth of the program that Teagasc is involved with. International relations development, just to draw a little bit of a box around it. I already introduced myself. I suppose in Teagasc, I took over this role about 5 years ago. And the majority of my time is spent in the outward-looking part of the job. There's also a strategy component, but most of my time is spent on the international relations and development. So I define the relations as connecting beyond our traditional networks and some of the countries we have worked with a lot over the last number of years. So typically in Teagasc, we're well connected into the European countries and the European partners for a lot of the research funding and also for some of our KT work. We have a good few connections in US and also down in the New Zealand, Australia territory. So there's lots of other parts of the world that are, I suppose, interested in taking on the climate challenge and developing sustainable agricultural food production systems. So I suppose our interest is in trying to connect with some of these and seeing where we can work together and collaborate. So obviously the overall goal for everyone is to try and hit majority, or at least some of the sustainable development goals that have been in the I suppose the minds of everybody for the last 5-10 years. Today in particular, I'm going to focus on our development projects, which are mainly focused in East Africa and mainly focused on dairy. And again, I'll explain a bit about that as we go along. So Ireland to East Africa, just to make the point initially, it's a good bit away. It's about 12 hours of flight time, whatever way you go. And again, those countries down here are all clustered around the equator, so different climate, different terrain, different people, different economic situation to Ireland. So I suppose that always asks the question, well, what can we offer to the people of Africa? So again, we'll try and talk through that a little bit as we go along. I suppose the Africa story is well known by most people, but just again to look back at a slide that I find useful as a kind of a reference point for a lot of the Irish aid effort over the years. If we look at the world population here on the left, this big circle here, and we look at the red being the amount of people that are severely food insecure, and the amber being the amount of people then that have moderate food insecurity on top of that out of the total population, you can see that there's always a percentage of a population struggling with food security. So then if we look across here at the different parts of the world, if we look at Asia, we look at Africa, we look at North America, Europe, Latin America, Caribbean, you can see where the big populations are. And you can also see where I suppose the food insecurity is worst. So for me, this graph tells a good important message that the red part of this large circle is very big as a percentage for the Africa area compared to even Asia or across the other parts of the planet. So food security is a huge challenge, as everybody knows, and climate change is happening. And as is well covered in the media, the people in the parts of the world that are most fragile get hit the most when climate is changing. So Teagasc has eked out a role over the last number of years in this space. We're not on our own. We're part of Team Ireland. So if you look at the Department of Foreign Affairs, documentation, policy, you look at Food Vision, talking about Ireland being a world leader in sustainable food systems. There's lots of, I suppose, structure around the background that helps set the scene as to what Ireland's contribution will be and where we fit in is Teagasc's challenge, I suppose. There's also an Ireland Africa Rural Development Committee that's chaired by Tom Arnold. And we contribute into all of these policy forums and fora, but as well as that, then we do some work on the ground. I suppose the most useful structure that we probably have at government level is an organisation called Sustainable Food Systems Ireland, which is headed up by David Butler. And this organisation is an umbrella across the different departments and entities and institutes that are involved in food, but also involved in some development projects across the world, and particularly in Africa. So ourselves, Department of Ag, or BIA, Enterprise Ireland, Food Safety Authority Ireland, are in this organisation called SFSI. And with the good support of the people in Foreign Affairs and Irish Aid, we were able to, I suppose, construct projects that can be funded in by Irish Aid and take a small portion of the overseas development aid budget, which is, I think, currently around the 2 billion mark. So there's a huge contribution, as everybody probably knows, from Ireland into supporting aid and development. And the projects that we get involved with tend to be more on the development side than on the aid side, if you like. So that's SFSI, so that's the government story. In our own statement of strategy recently published, we've also reinforced the fact that it's our strategy to provide a targeted program of support to institutes in developing countries involved in agri-food research, extension, education. So more or less, we're out there available to support organizations like ourselves in developing countries that we can feel that we can work with in a collaborative way. And I'll talk about some examples of that later on. Okay, so some recent history of our development work. If we look back in time in Teagasc and before that AFT and all the rest of it, there was a lot of emphasis on running and development projects abroad. There was a strong history of that over the years. Like everything, it goes in waves. And in recent years, up to about 10 years ago, there was little enough activity directly in this space. So our former director, Professor Jerry Boyle and Lance O'Brien, would have initiated a number of projects supported by the likes of Seamus Cross and Dennis Griffin and a few others to try and get some programs and projects moving in this space. So what I call a kind of a phase one set of projects about 5 years ago, between 5 and 10 years ago, were generally around the area of potatoes, a bit on economics with colleagues in rural economy, and a bit in soils. So Trevor Donlan and David Wall and a few others were also involved at that stage. So they were largely around PhD studies, bits of projects, etc. So that was, if you like, the first steps. And then about 5 years ago, we stepped into more substantial projects that Teagasc were leading, maybe larger projects and working with a collaborative group in that space. Again, it's not just Africa, but it's mainly Africa. We also do some work. Our pigs team are very active doing some work in Malta. Kieran Carroll doing some work in Malta and out in Vietnam, hopefully next year with some of his colleagues in the pigs team. And Cian Condon has also done a bit of work with on goats and development work out in Cyprus through an EU-funded project, again through SFSI. So there's a lot of bits and pieces that are moving on, but today I'm just going to focus on the we'll call the chunky projects in the dairy area. And just a flash of a slide there from a few years ago from our Tea Research magazine, and that's Dennis Griffin there in the middle with some of the colleagues that he was working with on the potato seed development project. Okay, so the dairy projects, just to draw our attention to the map, again, 3 countries here, Tanzania, above that Kenya, and above that Eritrea. So 3 projects that are kind of similar. We work with an institute as an anchor point in each of these countries. In Kenya, it's an organization called CALRO, which is a research institute, and we work with the dairy component of that. I'll talk a good bit in detail about that later on. Second project then is in Eritrea, and the third project in Tanzania. The Eritrea project is a little bit different. It's an EU-funded project, and it's headed up still, thankfully, by a former colleague of ours, Lance O'Brien, who's still heavily involved, and involves a strong partnership of Irish institutes and strongly supported by Vita, an NGO that's active in the country. So that project has a good bit of information about it on the website. So anyone that wants to follow up on that later can do so or come back to me. But that's about a €4 million project. The Kenya project has risen to about a €2 million budget project. And the Tanzania project is about a €3 million budget project. So all in all, we've about a 10 million, I suppose, project budget portfolio. But there's a wide and vast number of partners involved in all of these projects, and they're all slightly different construction. And again, I'll talk in detail about the Tanzania one first, and a bit about the Kenya one, and then James, who is a partner, a collaborating partner on the Kenya one, will then jump in with his piece on how that works. Again, similar approach to all of these. It's about looking at the milk production and processing system and seeing where it needs to be strengthened through the institutes. And I suppose, as I said, there's different funding models. Irish Aid are funders of 2, and EU are funders of 1. So the Tanzania project, just to identify that, it's known as the Maziwa Faida project, which is translates roughly to successful dairying, funded by Irish Aid. It's running since 2021, and it's a strong partnership between an organisation called Tiliri, a research organisation in Tanzania that has a dairy centre up in the northeast in a place called Tanga. And the 2 people that are, I suppose, most important in this project are the lead of that dairy centre, Zabron, in Tanzania and Tanga, and Pádraig French, our head of systems in Moore Park Dairy Systems. So they effectively have a co-designed work program that they work through. It's hitting all the areas that you might expect with milk and production and the value chain. Feeding cows, forages, conservation, animal breeding, management of farms, research centre performance, looking at good systems for data, trying to develop systems of sustainability, energy, water, all of that sort of stuff. So it's all the stuff you'd imagine, and we've a nice bit of footage from that, so I won't jump in too deeply into the detail at this point, but we'll show a video in a couple of minutes that'll give you a sense of the place and also the project, and it was developed by the guys themselves out in Tanga. Again, one of the big parts of this project was to provide funding and support for the centre to have an active programme that was relevant to the stakeholders outside the walls of the research centre. As it happens, there's an education college across the road from the centre as well, which was useful, an organisation called LITA. So a nice partnership has developed between Tiliri and LITA and the farmers in the surrounding region or catchment. So again, it's a pilot project, but it's a nice size project that shows what's possible through development, farm demonstration, getting stuff out on farm, getting data collected on farm. As part of the project, about 8 of the staff in Tiliri and LITA have undergone a master's training program in a local university, Sequoia, and we have had a number of cross visits in between those students and other people working in the organisation over to Ireland, and a lot of visits from Ireland back. Lots of people have come over here to get some work experience in different facets, whether it's laboratory work or farm work or systems work. So we've had 2 groups that have come, one group last spring, another group coming this spring, just to get deep experience of how the Irish farming system works. And we also had 2 UCD master students who were studying a master's in innovation support with Monica Gorman and Jim Kinston UCD. They visited Tanga last year, or this year, I should say, to do their project work in Tanga, hosted by Zabron. So it was, again, lots of angles and parts and components and collaborations in this project, and we'll go through that now when we get to the video. So just first of all, a few slides, a few pictures for people that may or may not know Pádraig. That's Pádraig French there, on a visit to the centre. And I like this picture here in the top right. You may have seen it before, where we met with one of the local farmers who was demonstrating to Pádraig the type of forage that they can end up feeding to dairy cows at particular times of the year when forage runs out. So typically in the system, you would have a cut and carry system, as it's called, where the farmers would keep the cows close to home, but they would go and fetch whatever forage they could find for the cows. And as the year would go on and maybe weather would disimprove, they'd have to go further for forage, and the quality might drop. So the whole idea of growing and managing forages for livestock would be, I suppose, not the norm in a lot of the areas. So this is a big part of the project, is to try and develop forages that can grow, be managed, conserved and kept, and try and keep the animal production at a reasonable level. So that's Tanzania. So I'm going to leave that for now and move on to Kenya. And I'm conscious that I've maybe talked for a little bit too long myself so far, so I don't want to squeeze James's time too much. So I'll try and get through the introduction as quickly as possible. So the Area Kenya Ireland project is running since 2019 in different guises. It's our longest running project, and again, focus on improving forages for dairy cows, funded by Embassy of Ireland Kenya through Irish Aid. And in this particular partnership, Teagasc, supported by Greenfield Ireland, who some of you may know is Seamus Cross runs that organisation. He also supported by other colleagues like that have retired in recent years, and we work closely with the Cathal Research Institute. And again, one of the challenges for the institute is to influence, I suppose, or to improve the research program, and also to have an influence in national policy in areas like animal breeding, and also to outreach into farms. So that was the background to the project. And this project was supported on the ground by Self-Help Africa. And it's now coming kind of towards the end of the project. We've had a number of different activities. We have outreach then with Barak Agricultural College, local co-ops, and Development Pamoja. And James will explain in more detail where he fits in as a collaborating partner in this project. But the overall project is trying to demonstrate good systems of forage production to feed dairy cows. And typically you're talking about trying to get cows that are yielding 1 to 2 litres a day, up to maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 litres per day. That's the general ambition. And I think it's important, I didn't say at the start, but in all of these countries, the scale is massive. If you look at Kenya Tanzania and Kenya, you're talking about 70 million people, 50 million people, and then your cattle population is around 30 million and 20 million. So there's nearly a head of cattle for every 2 people of population, and the scale is massive. So, and the production is generally modest or low because of the weather and the feeding system. Okay, so just to point out where we are on the map, we're down in Kenya here. We're in around the middle, but Nairobi is the capital down there at the bottom. Kara and Navash is up here about a couple of hours north, and then James's location is further north again, up around Nakuru. So that's enough from me. There's lots of pictures, but I'll come back to them if there's time, and I'll hand over to James.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. So maybe I'm going to start as well by saying our name, Development Pamoja. The Pamoja is it's Swahili for together. As Paul had said there, we're a small Kenyan organization. We're registered in Ireland. We're registered in Kenya. We started in about 2010, and we have an annual turnover of approximately 150,000 euros. That wouldn't just be for our agricultural projects; it would be for other things as well. And we have a staff of 17 people. Just background on that as well. We also do a bit of medical care. We kind of see ourselves as going into places where maybe the government support doesn't help the community, things like that. So we have a long-running program since 2012, helping people with disabilities. So in 2 areas that we work in, we've got 2 medical centres, and we have physiotherapists. And in the last few years, actually, we have things like special rooms for kids and that, so that they can come in and play. They can come in and play before they go into to do their physio and stuff like that as well. But despite all the medical stuff as well, we have always primarily focused on agriculture. And as Paul will know as well, if you're talking about agriculture in Kenya, you're basically talking about women, because that is primarily their work. They're working, taking the cows for water, searching for fodder and stuff like that. So if you can, whenever we do these projects, so what the first thing you do is kind of try interact with the women. And Paul had mentioned there at the beginning as well. We're in this project with Baraka College. And there's a man there, Brother Tony Dolan, who unfortunately passed away this year. He's probably had the biggest effect on my work in Kenya, and he's always been telling me that if you want to get to the family, if you want to get to the community, you should work through the women, because they're the people that know exactly what it means to run a farm on a daily basis. And as Paul said there, we're with the Dairy Kenya Ireland project since 2019. It was mainly actually because of Seamus Cross got us involved in that, and we're very grateful for that. And it just says there at the end as well, one of the other reasons why I'm on this call is I'm a Walsh Scholar with doing a PhD in UCC, and it's on the issue of forages in Kenya and the impact they're having on smallholder farmers. Yeah, so you can go on there, Paul, I think. So just to give you a sense of where we are, Paul had said there, this project is primarily in the county of Nakuru. So we're on the border of Nakuru and Baringo counties, and our altitude would be known as mid to low altitude. We don't get a lot of rain every year, 600 millimeters to 900 millimeters. You have the long rains from March to May. You have the short rains from October to December. And even this year, their short rains from October to December were very, very poor. So that's going to end up causing issues next year. Our main traditional livelihoods for the farmers out there, they would traditionally have been pastoralists. They'd have walked their animals along for a very long distances, particularly in the dry season. And historically, sisal is important here. It's for making rope. Just because it's so dry, it grows very, very well here. But in the last few years, more people are coming to this area. The sisal estate, it was a huge estate of about 30 acres, 30,000 acres. It's been broken up, and people are buying plots of land between 2 and 6 areas. So we feel that this is a very, very important project for farmers in this area. Just before we start talking about the signpost farms, I think it's important to ground what supporting households within rural Kenya is. As I say, and I'm always labouring this point, it's the women that do most of the work. I think that's a very good photo there. You can see Caroline, she's one of our signpost farmers, and she's mixing the biogas system. You can see all the women there, they're all immaculately dressed, but they still have to do all the work on the farm. One of the first things that we did, even before the Dairy Kenya Ireland project, was saving groups with women. Now, if anyone knows anything about Kenya, this isn't unique whatsoever. If you go to any villages, you have these table banking groups. But what we notice with a lot of the people that we work with in, let's say, specific times of the year, like January, when kids go back to school, a number of women would want money at the same time. So people would be putting in maybe €10 every month. And then when it comes to January, out of a group of 10 or 20 people, maybe half of them or even more than half of them would need money. And then when they divide up the money, they don't get enough. So what that means is maybe the child doesn't go to school, or if they wanted it maybe for something they wanted to do on their farm, they wouldn't have enough money to do the project that they want to do, and they end up not spending the money as they want. And then that would mean as well that money doesn't come back into the group, because people's motivation for giving the money back wouldn't be as high. So what we did is Development Pamoja. What we do is we get the groups, they come into our facility, and we handle the money for them. And then at the times when we see a number of women want money at the same time, we'll increase the amount of money put on the table so that everybody can get the loan that they need. Now, you might think like everything is perfect in that sort of project. Obviously, we still have situations where people mightn't pay back as we would like them to. But you find particularly again with the women, we do have men in the groups, but the repayment rate from the women is almost always 100%. And we can see it's helped them massively in the last few years. Talking to them about growing stuff like alfalfa, desmodium, Napier, which was mentioned on from Tanzania. The farmers really liked the idea, but unfortunately, what happened is they don't where we'd be classed as semi-arid area, so they wouldn't have the water. So what we started doing within our groups, if you were in a saving groups, you could avail of a tank. Even while you'd have other loans, you could still get a water tank from us, and then you pay it back slowly. Then we developed that a bit further, and we started lining ponds because I'm saying it's semi-arid, but when it does rain here, it rains very, very heavily. So we would dig that to take. It was dangerous as well if it's 200,000 liters. If you're going in with a bucket and try to take out the water. So we started developing solar pump systems. And at the end of that, again, we started doing biogas. And one of the great things about the biogas systems that we've noticed is, first of all, the work of women is looking for water and looking for firewood. So you're reducing the women's work massively. Also, you're not cutting down trees. All these initiatives, they don't just help with the forage-based systems that we're trying to promote. They cut down a woman's workload every single day. It helped us to make massive trust between ourselves and the community when we provide these initiatives to them. And here I think it's important that we do appreciate Seamus Cross and Teagasc in particular, because while we've done all this, you might look at that and go, well, what's this got to do with forages? But they've been very supportive on how we wanted to approach this project. And the washer tanks and the dams, we do insist that so that there's some continuity. As Paul said, the project is finishing soon, but the solar and the biogas, they're quite big capital expenditure for the women. So a solar pump system would cost about €700. Biogas system costs €600 for 4 cows. So we give them that subsidized price. They pay 50% and we pay 50%. But we think it's important that the farms are set up with all these things. When you set up the farms properly, when you make sure that the women have enough time to do their other chores, to look after their children, of course they have to do the cooking and all that. They're more willing then also to try plant the forages because they can manage their time better throughout the day. So then the collaboration from Dairy Kenya with the Dairy Kenya Ireland project. It provides funding for a range of activities on farm that enable better production and more efficient use of resources. And that's a lot of what you said that I was talking about there in the last slide. Even, like when you put in the washer dams, if you position it properly on the farm, you're making sure that you're not taking the topsoil off the farms, because as I said, when it does rain between March and April, it's usually very heavily, and you see an awful lot of the topsoil is moved off the land. So if you position the pond at the top of the farm in a good position, it prevents all that from happening as well. This project as well is good. As I said, people traditionally would have been pastoralists, but now because farm sizes are getting smaller, Paul mentioned it, there's 50 million people in Kenya now. So the good land is becoming less and less. Where we are, which will be semi-arid, a lot of people are moving from the Kenyan, those type of areas, and looking for land in our type of area, because and the very, very high producing parts of Kenya. So this is very good when you have maybe to get the idea of forages across. I think it's important to note as well within farming systems in Kenya. For a farmer, the top priority is they're primarily subsistence farmers. The priority is to have maize and beans for your family. So why I might be doing a PhD and all this project is on forage crops, I may think about forage crops every single day of the week. For the farmers here, it's down the pecking order for them. But when we go into projects and when we go into a farm, and again, Brother Tony was very helpful to us in this type of thing. He'd always say that if you want to get them to implement your forage-based systems, help them with the other things. Fruit does very well where we are, so our extension staff would go in and they would help with making sure that farmers plant the proper fruit trees for their area. They plant the proper maize so that it's fit for the altitude that we're in, and for their beans that when they're planting, when they're ploughing, all those systems we make sure as well that they're doing that properly. And then when the farmers can see that they can trust us, they can trust their extension officer, they're far more willing to try and plant some forages. Because forages before 2019, nobody where we are ever made silage. Nobody where we are ever used alfalfa or desmodium before we started this project. That's been another one of the biggest things we've seen from this project, is the preserving of silage. It's very, very expensive here, because if you're a small farm, 2 to 5 acres, economies of scale, you can't get a contractor to come in and cut silage. So we were fortunate. Emmanuel from Ireland gave us a grant, and we bought a tractor, and now we can go in. If people are in the saving groups, we'll cut silage for them, sorghum silage or maize silage, and then they have forages during the dry season, which we're heading into now. And we would do that for them, not as a subsidized price, but we're not doing it to make a profit. And again, farmers can take a loan, because that's a huge capital cost to them. If you're putting your kids in school, and if you only have 2 acres to make your profit from, a lot of them can't afford the initial cost of cutting silage and finding the plastic. So we help source the plastic for them. The molasses, you put the molasses on the sorghum silage before you cover it up, and then through their saving groups they pay back. The idea, obviously, and as Paul had mentioned there, that you'd increase the milk from maybe 1 to 2 liters to 4 to 5. And the farmers, in particular, the women, we can see that when they see the increase, they're very willing to pay back because they know they'll need silage the year after again. So we use the signpost model. We have a demonstration farm first on Development Pamoja. We have a farm of about 11 acres. So we have a site and we have under protein crops, we'd have about 2 acres under protein crops for 5 cows, 4 followers and 2 calves. But what we have noticed, it's the signpost farm is far more effective in getting the message across to farmers. The woman there, one boy, that's her. She's one of our signpost farmers, and that's her Lucerne, and that's one of the groups in an area called All Round Guide that we work in. So people will come maybe to Development Pamoja and they'll say, "Oh, sure, James, he's a foreigner. There's a project. We can see the big 4x4s coming in to help him out." Maybe they think that they can't do it on their land, but if you can get very good signpost farmers, if the farmers in the area can look over the fence and can see one boy there is planting forages, well, why can't I? And it's proved to be very successful. I mentioned there Caroline. She was in one of the last slides. We've had biogas on our farm for the last 3 or 4 years. Now, a lot of the farmers would say to us they wanted biogas, but they first had to fix the water systems on their farms. Then, when they have that, they want to put in the biogas. But very few farmers wanted to take it on. They were nervous about taking on the cost. Caroline took the chance, and within a month of farmers going in to see how biogas works on her system, it provides her with all the gas she needs for the cooking for the family. Immediately, loads of other farmers started wanting to put it in place. And we have a short video there in a while that we'll show you. And you can see there's Caroline, and from her group, a woman called Daisy. She's already put in biogas as well. So the signpost farmers, you have your neighbour implementing something, and then they know that they have the support of the DKI project and they have the support of Development Pamoja behind them. They're far more willing to take the chance. Baraka College as well have been brilliant to help us with that. They have a man up there, Dr. John King. He comes down constantly. We have discussion groups around all our signpost farms. He's been very helpful to us, how to organize the discussion groups and to get the message across to the farmers. So without labouring the point, you can even see all the women there helping us with the sorghum silage. It's all women are carrying they're all carrying the sorghum to make the silage. That's our tractor that I was talking about. As you can see, it's just stationary because you're only planting maybe 1 acre of the sorghum, and you feed it into the forage harvester, and then we make the silage from that. The key elements that we see, Lucerne does very well because the climate is quite warm where we are. So if you have adequate rain and you have the heat, the Lucerne grows very well. Lucerne, it's alfalfa, I think, in Ireland. And Desmodium and Lab as well is very good. The other thing about a lot of these crops, like Lucerne and Lab, they're legumes and they help fix the nitrogen in the soil. Another thing we're trying to do is improve dairy housing and animal health. So on the demonstration farm we have in Development Pamoja, we put a huge emphasis on that. We have a very good manager, Koigi. He's very good to make sure that the housing is clean. When we have farmers coming in, they can see like how beneficial animal health is. We wouldn't have had to call the vet for the last 2 or 3 years, where a lot of the farmers that we would have, they constantly have problems with their animals. Mastitis would be a big one out there as well because hygiene wouldn't be great on the farms. And then without labouring the point, we go on about the biogas and solar systems are important to us, and the machinery access. We don't just have the tractor. People take loans off us as well for chaff cutters, so they would use them primarily for cutting up the napier. Like, it's not just that we would be telling farmers it's important to plant these forage crops. It's also how you manage it afterwards. So napier, a lot of farmers, because they'd be nervous, they wouldn't have forages for the dry season. They let the napier grow too high. So what we would do is we get them to cut that Napier's elephant grass. They cut the elephant grass at the right time. If they have the wedge, as you call it, we'd help them to make the silage out of that so they have it for the dry season. And obviously, if you're cutting it up smaller, it's more efficient use of the actual crop as well. Paul mentioned it there, and we can see it on the demonstration farm. When we started this project, we were getting 3 to 4 litres a day. Whereas now we're getting the average will be 7 to 9 on the farm. On the cows that we have cows are milking up to 15 just after calving, they'd be milking up to 15 litres. That genuinely is unheard of in our area. And it's not that we're looking at Friesians or high grade animals. It's all mixture cows. Ayrshire mixed with local breeds. Some Holstein mixed with the local breeds, the Sahiwal here as well. And then another big thing about getting the forage-based systems, in particular getting the proteins right, is a reduced reliance on purchased concentrates. A lot of the farmers during the dry season would be forced, if they want the animals simply to survive, they'd have to go and buy dairy meal. And a lot of the dairy meal that you buy here, you really don't know the quality of it as well. So we'd have a meeting every month with our farmers, like the heads of all the different groups, and it's like sometimes they'd be joking and saying, "Oh, this project has helped us. Our animals don't die anymore." But that's the reality out here up until 2019. And even with farmers that wouldn't really be implementing these systems, we still see January, February, March, a lot of their animals end up dying. And if they don't die, then they have to sell them. And when they sell them off, they're selling them for €30. So the asset, cows are a huge asset for the family. What this project does as well, if you can get your animals through the dry season, not even talking about how much milk they produce, it gives them the power, the authority to sell the animal when they want to, not when they're forced to do it at a cost that would be means that they're absorbing a huge cost to their family. And then why the signpost farms work. Farmers adopt faster when they see neighbours succeed. I'll go back to the biogas. It's so visual when you see people, when you see the biogas systems on the farm and you see the farmers looking at it and they want to introduce it themselves. The discussion groups and extension are more effective than one-off training, and I would completely agree with that. The discussion group we've only brought in maybe in the last year, Seamus Cross and Frank Kelly from Teagasc were out with us there in 2024, and they helped to set up our discussion groups, and they have proved very, very successful. And you can even see the farmers when they move from farm to farm, they're so proud of their farms. They like showing off to their neighbours as well how this system has helped them. There's one lady, one woman in the video you'll see in a few minutes called Sharon. Her farm is absolutely exceptional, and she's so proud when she gets the opportunity to show it off to people. And then the diversification protects family from climate and economic shocks. Like as I said, forages aren't probably the main thing for farmers out here. It's maize and making sure that you have enough maize and beans for your family. And we would never even promote farmers going completely into forage-based farming, because if you have 2 or 3 acres, if you have 2 or 3 cows, if one of your cows die, well, then that's 66%. You're left with 66% of your assets. You do need your maize. Even our area may not be a very good area for growing maize, but farmers to see if they can get half a ton of maize off their farm every year, that will feed their family. So when we are going around doing our work on forages, we still absolutely encourage farmers to be diversifying what they have on their farm. You might see in that picture behind us some nice banana trees as well. So we do obviously focus on forages, but we also acknowledge that farmers need to diversify in what they are doing. And then again, and this is a huge point, and I know I labour it a lot, women benefit massively from this system. They're not looking for water. They're not looking for firewood. They can better manage their time for the day, and they can actually rest for a while, because I honestly don't understand how they keep going. And I've been here 15 years. They do a huge amount of work, and this type of farming has really, really helped them. And then maybe just to run through as the last part here, what we've given out within this project so far: 200 water tanks, 40 water dams, 15 solar pumps. We also give out dairy goats, beehives, so that they can diversify again. Over 3,000 tonnes of silage conserved. Before 2019, there would have been none. Increase in milk from maybe 2 to 3 litres, it's gone up to about 7 to 9. Reduction in cost of inputs, which is huge, and reduction in calving intervals. And then at that, this is one of our saving groups. You can see there, 13 active saving groups. We've 4 discussion groups, 100 farmers trained on forage-based systems, and 100 farmers now planting forages across 5 villages. And it just mentions it there at the end. That's basically what I'm looking at in my PhD, to see how forage systems, what are the drivers, what drives people to adopt these systems, and how we can make it better.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, James. And I think, Paul, you had a couple of reflections that you wanted to
Yeah,
go
I'm
through
afraid
before we
this has
finally
become
wrap
a
up.
Christmas special, Mark. I'm afraid, due to our what would you call it? Our timekeeping hasn't been the best, but I think the content is engaging, and
Yeah, absolutely.
hopefully people will stick with us for a few more minutes, and maybe we'll have a follow-up if required as well. So just, I suppose, for me, just to make a few kind of wrap-up reflections, I describe this as it's difficult work, but it slowly works. This is all part of the longer game of building in-country capacity and working with the networks that are in country where possible and trying to find those networks and see what works. And my description of what we do is that we don't hand out fish and we don't necessarily teach people how to fish and then just walk away. We work together to find the best way to fish. That's my description of it. And as it's very important for me that Teagasc is part of the broader Team Ireland team. Without SFSI and the pioneers that were already mentioned that went out and put some of this work, got projects going, got the funding, and obviously Irish Aid for funding. Like none of this it would be possible. So it's slow and steady from my perspective, and it's very encouraging to know that I'm always getting queries from people that are becoming more aware of the work at a certain time in their career and their life. They maybe want to contribute. So I suppose I see it as my job to try and enable that and find routes for people to take on as much as they can or want, and be comfortable that in general, that it's a positive contribution that will stick, that it won't just disappear or melt away as soon as the project is over. So that's the ambition. And I think for us as an organisation, it has encouraged us to be more outward looking. And again, as things change with our production system, it's not that unbelievable now that some of the crops that we see being grown in different parts of the world may be grown in future in Ireland. We see the kind of the double drought happening in most parts of Ireland now during the summer or during the production year. So I see all this work as supporting the previously stated food vision ambition of being a world leader in developing sustainable food systems. We can't do that from where we are. Our scale is small, but as an initiator, as a pilot, we can make a contribution. And I suppose the other thing it reminds me is that we should appreciate our system, but also develop the resilience of our system. Because typically I'll get queries from countries like, how did the co-op thing get established? How did you get all that data, for all the animals in the country? All the stuff that we take for granted here, and we sometimes complain a little bit about it maybe and wants to be better. But we have a system and we need to mind the system, but we also need to make it better and make it more resilient for the future. And I suppose my final call then is if you want to get involved, if you want to follow up with James on the Development Pamoja work, he gives opportunities to people to actually go out and see what's going on. I know a couple of farmers that were out there recently and very much found it very interesting and an enjoyable place to visit. But other people have gone out in the past and worked. We've had people gone out as master's projects and spend some time working there. Or whether it's people within or outside Teagasc that want to get involved in some of the projects, they're free to contact me. And again, James won't say it, but I'll say it on his behalf. He's always available to take contributions if people feel the interest in doing so, and you can follow that through on his website. So that's it for me and for James for now, Mark. And again, apologies for running over, but maybe you want to take a few important questions at this point.
Well, look, just to highlight one of the comments coming through here. It says here, one of the best webinars this year. So well done to all. So really excellent presentation and videos and encouraging remarks here to keep up the good work, and great to see the fantastic work of Brother Tony Dolan being acknowledged as well, who I know is very, very well known across the globe for his good work. Look, we are tight on time, but we do have some time for any questions. I mean, it is such a difference, I guess, as you've highlighted there, Paul. The technology and so on is starting from a lower base. I really liked that phrase that you used there, James, that farmers adopt faster when they see their neighbours succeed, and it really is so true. And that power of that signpost model, where demonstration is in a real life scenario is far more effective than necessarily in a research environment. We have shared the links there for people to the project on the chat. So if anyone wants to find out more about the project itself, they can click through to the links there, and we can there's lots of information, lots of links there as well around the Teagasc programs involved. So we are a little bit tight on time. Paul or James, you're welcome to make any final remarks if you'd like to before we wrap up this morning.
Yeah, but well, Yeah, Paul, if I could just jump in there. All right, Mark, I do think it is important. First of all, the embassy has been very supportive of us. As I said, they do give us a lot of freedom to try implement this project. But in particular, Paul, he's been out to see us. Teagasc, they have been relieving Pat Dillon. He's been out to see us, and we really, really appreciate that. And I do have to mention as well Seamus Cross, because he's had a huge impact on this project. We're only one of a few nodes. He's been very helpful to another cooperative up there that they've done very well as well. And even us, as I said, when we started this, and it's a lot of it has to do with what Brother Tony always said to me, you can't just talk about forages, you have to talk about everything. When we went and said that, those type of things to Seamus, he completely bought into it and completely accepted what we want to do. So to Paul and to Seamus, honestly, I personally am really appreciative of all the help that you've given to us.
That's a praise there, Paul. Now, so a nice way to round off the year, and I can
It might be a good way to stop.
completely concur. Seamus Cross has been a huge influence on Irish agriculture and global agriculture, as we can see. So, yeah, we're very lucky to have him involved there.
I suppose I probably have forgotten somebody in all of the names that should have been mentioned. So apologies to whoever was not mentioned. There's always a broad team of people involved. So hopefully
Yeah.
we give everyone a shout out. But if not, we'll maybe the next time.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, look, lots and lots of high praise coming through here, and really encouraging words from across the country here from people who tuned in this morning. So, look, I think we probably should wrap things up given the time. We usually try to commit to people that we finish in within the hour. So, Paul and James, thank you so much for joining us. I know that the line went a little bit funny there at times there, James, but I think we got the full gist of what's going on and the great work that's going on there this morning or at the moment. So, Cathal, you didn't have too much work to do this morning.
No,
we
but
said,
we actually have one question, Mark, 'cause people are texting
okay.
and want to come in. One that keeps coming up. I've got a lot of messages. And James, you've said it several times that the women are excellent out there, do all the work. But what are the men doing? That's I've got loads of messages
Yeah.
asking that.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm asked constantly of Cathal. They manage the stock, so that's telling the woman go out and take them to the water and that. And I do sometimes maybe labour the point a bit too much, but it is true. Like if, and again, I'll go back to that was Tony always said that to me. Make sure that you get to the women if you want to get to the family, and it's just the way we've always worked. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think too much. I'm Irish. I'm not Kenyan. I'm not gonna start pontificating what men should do. I'm also unmarried, so that's not a good thing out here. They'd be saying, what does he know? He doesn't even know how to look after his own family because he doesn't have one. So we just work with who wants to work with us, and that is always the women, and that's what we do.
So
That's
again,
great.
my observation is that there's lots of stuff moving around. If you visit these countries, you see there's a kind of a what I call a roadside economy. You know, everything goes to the main road, tarmac. So when James mentioned some of the cash crops that are produced for sale, so that people can fund the family activities, maybe fund some education for children, that stuff gets hauled over to the road and exchanged with dealers and moved on to the city. So I think typically, James, a lot of the men would do that
Yeah,
type of
that's
role,
true. Yeah,
go and meet
yeah,
their
the
comrades
motorbikes and
and
all
the
that.
motorbikes. You see
Mm.
them all gathered at corners. So yeah, so we're not. I think it's important to say that we're only looking at this from our perspective, and we're not social commentators, so we can't say substantially,
Absolutely. Yeah.
how everything works. But it's clear when you want to, I suppose, influence what happens day to day in the farm. It's generally the women look after everything and are interested in stuff that makes their life a little bit easier physically and more time available then to look after children and schooling and all the rest of it. So I think that's the general pattern. I don't want to say every country's the same, but that's kind of the general pattern from what we've seen in the smallholder production systems. So it's interesting. Like it's not. I always say if you look back in Ireland's history, it's one of the reasons I think that Ireland is well received. If you look back to I said the Dunking cart taking the milk to the creamery, it's not that far back in our history, and it's not that different to what's happening day to day in some of the rural areas and in the areas where we're involved. So again, there's a mix. Every country would have some countries have big scale sort of corporate level sort of farming systems as well as small scale, but Irish Aid are always interested in supporting the institutes to support those that are furthest back or that have the least resources. So that's suppose that's one of the anchor points of our projects in Kenya and Tanzania. And that's been the consistent message. So thanks to yourselves and the team and Yvonne for hosting us. We appreciate the airtime.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for all the good work that you're both doing. It's great to see the Irish flag flying high there, and the Teagasc logo appearing and some of those projects. You know, we are very proud of our association with all of those projects. So, thank you for highlighting the good work that's going on. We are out of time, unfortunately, but thank you again for sharing the videos and the photos. Lots and lots of compliments coming through the chat here, as you can probably see. So keep up the good work is all I can say. So look, this is our last webinar for 2025. It's hard to believe we're 5 years on from when the webinars started out. We just want to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers, our collaborators, and everyone who joined us throughout the year. We really do appreciate the time and effort that you put in, and I think the feedback we've had from our audience has been really positive. We still get large numbers every Friday morning, so as long as we have that support, we will continue. So we just want to wish you all a warm and peaceful Christmas. I want to say a special thank you to Yvonne Maher and Mary O'Loughlin and all the team of specialists who support the Signpost webinar series. There is a lot of effort that goes in terms of lining up speakers and getting people set up for the Friday morning, so it goes seamlessly. So lots happens in the background. I just want to acknowledge that enormous work. So happy Christmas, everyone, and we hope to see you in the new year, safe and healthy, and have a lovely Christmas. Thank you.
You've been listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, the weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Don't forget to join us live every Friday morning for our latest webinar. For more, visit teagasc.ie. And you can also rate, review, and subscribe to the Signpost Series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Mark Gibson, and thanks for listening.